to my YouTube channel. My name is Louisa Kamal. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I'd love to have you with me on this journey, and let's take this conversation forward. So, what I'm going to talk about today is something that's quite dear to me, and something that I feel maybe, in as much as I might think that I know about it, there are so many other people who do not. And I know this because that was me some years back. As a mother, when you're expecting your child, you always think of the best. And you always think that you've done the best for the baby and you can only hope for the best. But when you get the baby, sometimes the experience you go through is not what you expected from the beginning. And that was me 3 years ago. Happened to me with my second born baby, my lovely Ethan. And it was quite a challenging time for me because at 2 months, he was diagnosed with a CHD. A CHD is a congenital heart defect. For me at that time, it was something that I really didn't imagine would happen to me. It's one of those things where you just imagine they only happen to some other people, but not you. It happened in a rather weird way. My child got very sick at 2 months. And when I took him to hospital, I was told he has pneumonia. Unfortunately, that was a misdiagnosis. He was given drugs, took them for some few days, he was not getting well, so I had to take him back to hospital. So when I get back to hospital, I'm told this child is suffering from bronchiolitis. That's just a form of bronchitis, but for young children. We go to hospital. At that time, my baby can't even breathe properly. He's put on oxygen, and all this time, the doctors are not sure whether it's really bronchiolitis or pneumonia because the symptoms are just similar. So eventually they now narrowed down to bronchiolitis, and he started treatment for bronchiolitis. But there's something the pediatrician noticed. In one of the rounds in the hospital, the pediatrician used to come to the hospital. He noticed that there was some kind of murmur in the heart. And for me, a heart murmur was something that I didn't even know what that was. So he says, this child has a heart murmur. So I ask him, what's a heart murmur? He tells me, now that's a sign that there could be another deeper problem, but he needs first to be checked by a cardiologist for us to determine the next course of action. So all this is happening so fast. The cardiologist comes in the next day, checks on him. He does an echo, they call it echocardiogram. It's more like, in simple terms, it's just like a scan of the heart. The same way that pregnant women go for scans, it's just a scan of the heart. So he goes for the echo. They find that he has 2 holes in the heart. So all this time I'm thinking, no, this can't be happening. How is it that my child has a hole in the heart? They're not even calling it a hole in the heart. They were calling it a CHD, which is congenital heart defect. So the doctor tells me he has a CHD. And I hear them talking about the kind of CHD. They call it a VSD. So there are all these terms that are flowing all over me, all around me. So now this VSD is a kind of congenital heart defect, which in full means ventricular septal defect. So the doctor says that my child has a VSD, which is a kind of CHD. So we go back to the ward. And I'm left there with my child. Of course, he's given some treatment for that day. But the doctor says that she needs to come back the next day so that now she can go and determine the kind of treatment that will be given to him. So I'm left in my room that day with my child, and I remember I didn't have anything to write on, but I remember I had a pen. So what I did, I took a piece of tissue paper, which I had in the bathroom. So I took a piece of tissue paper and wrote down all the questions. I started Googling. I went to Google on my phone. I started checking all kinds of what this means. And I was doing all kinds of research. So I started noting down all the things that I need to ask the doctor. I remember one night I was alone with the child in the room, and he started coughing a lot. He coughed. Then I called the nurse. So when the nurse came in, I told him maybe he's coughing too much and he's not stopping. So the nurse goes and gets these things they use to check the heart rate, the pulse rate, and all that. So he comes and checks the oxygen concentration. I remember at that time it read 40. Was it 40? Yes. It read 40. The oxygen concentration in my child's body was around 40. Normally, for a normal person, it should be from 80 and above. So it was really bad. So the doctor runs and puts him on oxygen again. They're doing so many things over there. And I'm just there. I don't know what's happening. Eventually, they stabilized the boy. And so we sat down with the cardiologist, and I asked her all the questions I had. I asked her what is the CHD, just simple things, because for me, it was not something that I thought would ever happen to me. Those are things that you just hear from other people. I asked so many questions. I asked all the questions I had. The doctor was very patient with us. And I now came to learn what a VSD is, which is a ventricular septal defect. It's a hole in the ventricle, which means that the oxygenated blood mixes with the deoxygenated blood, leading to, instead of the oxygenated blood going to the body, it mixes with that which is deoxygenated, and it's taken back to the lungs. So the lungs fill up with blood, and that is what was actually causing him to have those the kind of convulsions. The doctor told us that those were actually signs of heart failure. He was actually going into heart failure, and that is why he was exhibiting those signs. But we thank God we were able to catch it before it was too late, because for many people, they suffer through bronchiolitis and just frequent respiratory infections without knowing that it could be a heart defect, a heart condition rather. So, but for us, we thank God that as much as he went through the bronchiolitis, at least it happened for us to be able to catch the main problem. We've been on treatment. The child is now doing very well. But for the first year, I would say, he was put on medication. I remember at one time I was on the doctor's case telling her that he needs to have surgery, because all this time, the only thing that we think of when we hear that someone has a hole in the heart is that they go for surgery and then the hole is sealed, and so they're able to live their normal lives. So I was pushing the doctor for surgery, but the doctor told me, no, we cannot have surgery for your child at this point, because it's not really something that needs surgery at this point. We need to first check on it and give it time. And she assured me that there are cases where, with correct treatment, a child is able to actually get healed, and the hole is actually able to close, that is in layman terms, so that they're able to live their lives well.